Hello, this is Chandra Weigel, Associate State Director of Outreach and Advocacy for AARP in Texas. I want to welcome you to this important discussion on voting for the upcoming Tuesday, March 5th Texas primary. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization that has been working to promote the health and well-being of Americans 50 and older for more than 60 years. AARP Texas is working to ensure that all Texans get the information they need to understand recent changes locally and how that may impact them. If you have questions about voting from home, voting early, or voting in person for the Tuesday, March 5th, then you are in the right place. Joining us today for this important discussion is our special guest, Harris County Clerk Teneshia Hudspeth. She will discuss how the voting process will work in Harris County and answer your questions to make sure you have the information you need to exercise your right to vote. If you've participated in one of our telephone town halls before, you know that it is like a radio talk show. You will have an opportunity to ask your question live. And if you would like to ask a question about voting in the upcoming election, press *3 on your telephone keypad to be connected to an AARP staff member. They will note your name and question and place you in the queue to ask your question live. So the sooner you press *3, the sooner you'll be online and able to ask your question directly. Please grab a pen and paper and keep it handy as we will be sharing helpful information, phone numbers, and websites that you may want to jot down. For those of you who are just joining, this is Chandra Weigel with AARP Texas. I want to welcome you to this discussion on voting in the upcoming Texas primary, which is Tuesday, March 5th. Primaries play a critical role in determining nominees for the political parties in advance of the November general election. So we're here today with our County Clerk, Teneshia Hudspeth, who will be taking your questions live. AARP is bringing you this telephone town hall to give voters up-to-date details about the voting process to keep them and your families informed in the upcoming Harris County, Texas primary. If you have any questions, if you have more questions, please visit aarp.org/TX votes. AARP Texas is very fortunate to have the Harris County Clerk, Teneshia Hudspeth. Thank you for joining. Would you please introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me on the call. I greatly appreciate any and all opportunities where we can share information to the public about voting and, most importantly, how we work to make voting possible for everybody in Harris County. I am Teneshia Hudspeth, a longtime employee, a former employee of the County Clerk's office here in Harris County and now elected County Clerk, and it is a great privilege to do this work and to continue this partnership with AARP. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's get started with a few questions that we'll take from participants. Well, before we get started with questions from our participants, let's talk a little bit about voting by mail. As you know, many of our voters are 65 and older and would be eligible to vote by mail. So please let us know what they would need to do to be able to receive their ballot by mail.
Yeah, so in Texas, not just Harris County, but in Texas, these are the qualifying factors or what affords those to qualify to vote by mail. So first up, 65 years of age or older on election day, 65 years of age or older on election day, sick or disabled, expecting to give birth within 3 weeks before or after election day, absent from the county of registration during the early voting period and on election day, civilly committed under Chapter 841 of the Texas Health and Safety Code or confined in jail, but otherwise eligible. So again, 65 years of age or older on election day, sick or disabled, expecting to give birth within 3 weeks before or after Election Day, absent for the county of registration during early voting period and on Election Day, confined in jail but otherwise eligible. These are all very important factors in those who qualify to vote by mail. And those that are 65 years and older, in 2020, approximately 1.8 million, that's about 35% of primary election voters, were over 65 years of age. And so that gives you a little statistical data as we are entering another presidential year. Only 28% of that 52K of voters over 65 opted to vote by mail. So again, when we look at the last presidential election in 2020, it was approximately 1.8 million voters of the 35%. They were primary election voters over the age of 65, and only 28% of those age of 65 opted to vote by mail. That was about 52,000 voters in 2020 who chose to vote by mail, and that was at the start of a very important pandemic. So again, as we look into this year, the annual ballot by mail process begins. Voters that qualify to vote by mail can apply to get your mail ballots for the entire election year now. That's today, where you can check off every single election that you'd like to participate in.
Wonderful. So in the past, hundreds of mail ballots were rejected under Texas's new law. Can you help our participants understand what was happening here and let them know what they should do if they are notified that their application has been rejected?
Yes. In 2021, the Texas legislature added ID information requirements to the mail voting application process. After this change, some applicants did not comply with the new identification requirements, which caused problems with their application to vote by mail. Since then, Texas created a corrective action process for applicants to resolve their compliance issue. The corrective action process affords applicants the ability to provide missing information on their application, either online, by mail, or in person. Still, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to review the mail ballot application instructions to ensure legally complete application. And we know there are several pieces of legislation that has made this process as intricate as it possibly can be. And on every single mail ballot application, there is many instructions, and I know it can be a lot to read for our mail ballot voters, but those instructions should be followed, and the application should be fully completed. That is so important, especially if you're planning to vote in this primary election. One of the most important questions that you'll see on that application is, are you voting in the Democratic or Republican primary? And that box needs to be checked in order for our office to know which ballot you'd like to receive for this election cycle. Again, earlier, I heard some information about primaries in Texas. Texas is an open primary state. You don't have to be registered by a particular party, and every primary, you can choose the party of your preference at that time. So again, when getting that application, we encourage you to fully execute and fill it out. Be sure to check the box of if you're an annual ballot by mail voter, all the elections you'd like to vote by mail this year, but be sure in terms of the primary election that you check which political party you choose to vote in so that you receive the proper ballot for this primary election.
Thank you. If you just joined this call, I'm Chandra Weigel with AARP Texas, and this is a live telephone town hall to talk about the upcoming Texas primary election. We're talking to Harris County Clerk Teneshia Hudspeth. As I stated earlier, this is an interactive call, so if you have a question, please at any time press *3 on your telephone keypad to be connected to one of our staff members. They will note your name, your question, and place you in the queue. The sooner you press *3, the sooner you'll be online with our guest. Before we go much further, I'd like to share some key dates regarding the upcoming Texas primary election, which is Tuesday, March 5th. Early voting in person begins Tuesday, February 20th. Last day to apply for mail-in ballot is February 23rd. And early in-person voting ends on Friday, March 1st. And, of course, Election Day is Tuesday, March 5th. So I have another question here for you. Since we've officially started, we're about to start early voting, can you provide some information on when and where people can vote and some protocols that they may need to remember as they're going to cast their votes?
Absolutely. So as you said, early voting begins February 20th. We are just a little bit over a week from that time frame and ends March 1st. The early voting period lasts 12 days by starting February 20th and concluding on March 1st, which is a Friday. Eligible citizens may vote at any one of the 79 Harris County early voting centers. So for this primary election, there'll be 79 early voting centers you can choose from and that 12-day period to be able to cast your vote. Again, this is in Harris County. So if you're in another surrounding county like Fort Bend, Brazoria, or Montgomery, maybe even Galveston, then you vote early in those counties, in the counties in which you're registered. Sometimes there's a little confusion about early voting in person, and people feel like, well, as long as it's in Texas, I can go anywhere. But again, there are 79 Harris County early voting centers for those registered in Harris County. Voting centers are open Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Yes, early voting period includes a weekend, which includes a Saturday and Sunday. So again, voting centers open Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And on the Sunday of early voting, 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. I strongly encourage voters to prepare by making a plan to vote. Voters can visit Harris Votes to review the list of approved identification credentials that voters may use at the poll. Voters can also print a copy of their personal sample ballot to take to the poll on Harris Votes. We strongly, again, encourage having a plan to vote. You can go to harrisvotes.com, whether it's on your phone or your laptop, and you can look at the 79 different locations. Maybe it's close to where you work or where you go to school or where you pick up your children from school or where you're shopping for that day. The great thing about early voting is you can absolutely vote anywhere and election day. But we're talking about early voting. And also on Harris Votes, you can go to our View Your Specific Sample Ballot on our website. There you'll enter your name and or address, and your specific sample ballot according to where you're registered will come up on Harris Votes. That sample ballot can be printed and taken into the poll with you. Texas law provides that written materials can be taken into the polling location with you. And again, we're in a presidential year primaries. The ballot is much longer than you typically see in a non-presidential year, anywhere from 90 plus contests on the ballot. That specific sample ballot would be helpful. There are also other voter guides, like maybe AARP has provided you with a voter guide, a nonpartisan voter guide, or the League of Women Voters provides you with a nonpartisan voter guide. Again, written materials are allowed in the polls. And I like to clarify that even if it's a push card from a candidate, as long as it's written materials and not your electronic device, those are the most important parts. So again, vote anywhere during the early voting period, 79 locations. Hours of operation are 7 to 7, except for Sunday, 12 to 7. And again, we continue to encourage you to visit harrisvotes.com, or if you need to call our office, we're happy to assist you at 713-755-6965. Again, that number is 713-755-6965.
Wonderful. Kind of as a follow-up to that question, I'm a longtime Harris County voter, and if I needed to check and make sure that I'm still registered, how would I go about doing that?
Thank you. To check your voter registration status, citizens may visit the voter registrar's website at hctax.net or votetexas.gov. Again, to check your voter registration status, citizens may visit the voter registrar's website at hctax, which stands for Harris County Tax.net, or votetexas.gov. Those websites will allow you, again, to put your name, address, or voter ID information to look at your voter registration status. I do know that the voter registrar's office, which is also the tax assessor collector, is sending out most up-to-date voter registration certificates. Everyone's old certificate says that it expired December 31st, and you will receive an updated voter certificate in the mail if you haven't done so already for the new election cycle.
So as a follow-up question, say someone forgets to do that and they show up to vote on, February 20th, and they're told that there's an issue with their registration. What is the process at that point?
Yeah, so just so you know, voter registration certificate is not the only qualifier to allow a voter to vote. There are many documents and IDs that you can utilize to vote. One of those first being a driver's license or a Texas form of ID. And so again, your voter certificate is not a requirement to have. You can utilize that as one of the documents, but there is a list of photo IDs that you can utilize to qualify to vote at a polling location. This is also on our Harris Votes website as well. You can use your driver's license. You can use your Texas, your Texas passport. You can utilize a Texas handgun license. You can also utilize your Texas election certificate ID if you have a Texas election certificate ID. For our United States military identification card holders, that document can also be used. So again, Texas driver's license or Texas ID, United States citizenship certificate containing a photo ID, Texas handgun license containing a photo ID, United States passport or book card, and United States military identification card containing your photograph. If for any reason you do not have one of those IDs that I have listed as immediate qualifiers to vote by mail, then you will be instructed to fill out a reasonable impediment, which is also called a RID form, and you can then provide that voter certificate as a form of ID, which signifies your voter registration, a current utility bill, a bank statement, a government check, a paycheck, or any certified domestic birth certificate. So again, those qualifying IDs with photos are the first line of ID requirements. The second, if you don't have one of those, is to fill out that RID form and provide then your voter certificate, utility bill, bank statement, government check, paycheck, or birth certificate.
Thank you, Clerk Hudspeth. So let's take a moment and hear from you participating on the call. We're going to do a quick poll before we go to our questions. So the question is for our quick poll is the question is, how do you plan to vote for the upcoming Texas primary election? Press 1 if you plan to vote by mail. Press 2 on your telephone keypad if you plan to early vote at an in-person location, or press 3 if you plan to vote in person at a polling location on Election Day. Again, how do you plan to vote for the upcoming Texas primary? Press 1 on your telephone keypad if you plan to vote by mail. Press 2 for early voting at an in-person location, or press 3 if you plan to vote at a polling location on Election Day. So while we're waiting on folks to cast their vote in this particular poll, we're going to go to questions from our listeners. Those of you who I have on the line with me, my colleague Jennifer Wandry. Jennifer has been lining up questions that have been coming in from our call participants. Jennifer, do you have any callers for us?
Yes, thank you, Chandra. I do have Annette here. I'm going to put her live now.
Hello. I would normally vote by mail, but in this last season, my husband and I got vote-by-mail ballots so close to the ballot due date that we were concerned that it would arrive. As you know, we're having problems with the postal department in Houston. My husband and I sent ours the same day, and they were approved as ballots 10 days apart. And so my question is, unless you have no ability to vote otherwise than mail, is it a good idea to rather do it early than by mail because of the issues with getting the ballots in on time?
Thank you, Ms. Annette.
Thank you for that concern. We are getting feedback in regards to vote by mail. This is my encouragement. You know, the deadline to vote by mail or to submit your application to our office is February 28th before the March primary. I cannot speak for the U.S. Postal System. I can only speak for our process, and we are receiving, we have a huge mail ballot department who is entering and receiving applications every day and working very hard to be sure that we are responding in an efficient time and manner. And so with those concerns, if you qualify to vote by mail, part of the reason why we're talking about this today is to, if you haven't submitted your application, to do it as soon as possible. And as soon as possible means, you know, not waiting to the last day of the deadline, even though we'll still fulfill those requests to the best of our abilities. But the unpredictable piece of this is the USPS system, and we just don't control that system, right? We understand that there are challenges that is being discussed in the media in regards to that. And so, again, as we receive mail each and every day, we're processing it, but it is a matter of when we receive it and how soon we're able to return it to you. And all those processes include the postal system. And so what is good about this process, you should know, if you do apply for a ballot by mail, and for any reason you haven't received your ballot by mail, or it's getting really close to the deadline and you're concerned, you can still go vote early or vote election day. Just bring that mail ballot with you to the early voting vote center or the election day vote center and surrender your ballot. That ensures we know that your ballot is not somewhere, you know, in the system, or you're provided with a provisional. But I just want to bring up to the point, because we don't know when when voters are applying or when they're sending back their information. But for any reason, if you have concern in regards to the mail system, when you sent your application or when you receive your mail ballot and when it will get back to our office, you can still go vote early or election day. We just consider, or would like you to consider, taking your live ballot with you that you receive by mail to the poll to surrender, and then you'll just vote a regular ballot. So I hope that helps clarify some things. Again, I cannot speak on behalf of the postal system, but that is what I encourage voters to do if there is a fear that maybe their mail ballot won't make it to us in time.
Jennifer, did we have any more questions?
Yeah, we have a few more, so we can keep going here. We have Bob. There you go. Bob, can you?
Hello, I'm
yes,
here. My question. All right, my question is: I have voted by mail for many years. I have mobility challenges, and do I have to reapply every year to have mail-in ballot sent to me, or will it carry over from last year?
Thank you for that question, Bob. You absolutely have to apply every year. The annual mail ballot process only qualifies for 1 year. So it does not carry over to the following year. So if you have not applied again for 2024, I suggest you get that application in for 2024, and it can cover the whole year. You just have to check the box that says annual ballot by mail.
All right, we have Ms. Ora on here as well. Ms. Ora?
Well, I'm actually answering for my mother. I just wanted to make sure that in voting for the primary, we didn't have to do anything prior to. Did we have to do something online? And I understand that we have to register, and we're going to check our registration status. But I mean, prior to going into in-person voting in the primary, do we have to do something before that? That's all I wanted to make sure I covered for her.
Yeah, so there is nothing that you necessarily have to do before going voting. The only thing we encourage you to do is go to harrisvotes.com and look at your sample ballot and just make a plan to vote, whichever plan that is, whether it's by mail, on election day, or early. But in terms for primary elections, the only difference that you will experience is the primary election process asking you which party you would like to vote in, the Democratic or Republican Party. There is no other things that the voters need to do to prepare for that. So if you're voting by mail, again, my encouragement is to get the application filled out as soon as possible and sent to our office as soon as possible. If you're voting early in person or on election day in person, just making sure that you have one of the qualifying IDs that we mentioned, and or, have a plan to vote, know where you're going out of the different locations that we're providing. Early voting or election day, you can choose to vote anywhere. And just viewing your sample ballot. Those are the most important facts. There's no other things that you need to prepare for if you're a registered voter and your status is just fine.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and look at our poll results. So we have about 50% of you that said that you plan to vote early, and about 43% say you're planning to vote by mail, and 7% says that you plan to vote on Election Day. Thank you so much for participating in that. Remember, if you'd like to ask a question, press *3 on your telephone keypad so that we can field your question and prepare it for our clerk to answer it. So we've heard that AARP members with questions about poll watchers in the upcoming election. Have there been any changes regarding poll watchers? Will we expect to see them in the primary election? Could you walk us through their roles and what has changed, if anything?
Yes. In reference to poll watchers, one thing about voting by mail is you don't necessarily have to be concerned about poll watchers in the privacy of your own home voting by mail. So if you choose to vote by mail, a poll watcher is something that you won't have to be concerned about. However, there are poll watchers who do participate in the process by reviewing what is called the Early Voting Ballot Board, who reviews your signature, and so those poll watchers show up for that to make sure that process is fair and intact. But a poll watcher is a person that's appointed to observe the conduct of an election on behalf of a candidate, a political party, or PACs with a specific purpose. And typically this happens in person during early voting or election day. Recent changes allow poll watchers to move around within the poll to observe activities. Regardless of changes, poll watchers are still not allowed to speak to voters or address any voter questions. That is something you all should know. So again, a poll watcher is appointed either on behalf of a candidate, a political party, or a political action committee or specific purpose, or sometimes a measure or a proposition on a ballot. Again, while there are recent changes that allows the poll watcher to move around in the polling location to view activities, they are not allowed to speak to voters and or address any voter questions. That is the job of the election judge and the election workers. And I think this was a topic a little bit earlier in terms of poll watchers. A poll watcher can't just walk into a polling location and just start observing and not address the election judge or workers. They actually have to present an appointed paperwork form, which the election judge approves to allow them to come in. That poll watcher also takes an oath that says that the job that they're going to do it with integrity. And so they are able to walk around the poll, look at the operation, take notes on a notepad. If you are voting individually by yourself and you're not getting assistance, the poll watcher can't stand right there and watch you casting your ballot. However, if you have an assistant or a bilingual worker that is supporting you while you're voting, the poll watcher can observe the support or the assistance that you're reviewing. But those are all the reasons you can understand poll watchers, and this is all provided by a Texas election code. But again, if you're voting by mail, you won't have to worry about a poll watcher coming to your door, knocking on the door saying, hey, we know you're voting by mail. We want to look at your process. This is only for the in-voting part of the process. We also have poll watchers that review our processes here in the elections office. All the operations that we do are prescribed for poll watchers to come and look at our processes as well.
Oh, wonderful. Wow, I didn't know all of that. Well, thank you.
Oh, yeah, on election night. We have poll watchers that come and look at us process the election tallies throughout the night. So that's pretty interesting, I think, to know, is that there are poll watchers that can observe almost any part of the process.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So let's bring more call participants into this conversation about the upcoming election, which is Tuesday, March 5th for the Texas primary. Let's go to the phones and see what's on the mind of callers. If you've just joined this call, this is Shonda Weichel with AARP Texas, and we're talking to our Harris County Clerk Teneshia Hudspeth. If you have questions at any time during this call, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to be connected to an AARP staffer. Remember, that number is *3 on your telephone keypad if you'd like to ask a question. Jennifer, let's take about 3 or 4 more questions if you have them.
Okay. Yeah, we have Larry here online. Mr.
Hello?
Larry, you can ask your question.
Yes, my wife and I have not received our voter registrations cards. What can we do about it?
So I will tell you, I spoke with the voter registrar just earlier this morning, and all you need to do is wait to receive it. They have started sending those voter certificates in the mail, and you should receive them any day now. They have started mailing those toward the end of January. You don't necessarily have to have your voter registration card to participate in this election cycle. You can go to the website that we provided earlier just to verify that your voter registration is still intact and still up to date at hctax.net. Again, that voter registrar's website is hctax.net or votetexas.gov. Any of those sites will allow you to check your voter registration status and take a look at it, but there's nothing to fear. If you've not received your new voter certificate in the mail just yet, that does not mean that you can't vote. It does mean that everyone's voter registration pretty much carries over to the next year and that your status will be just fine.
Thank you very much. We have Dawn here with another question. Dawn, you can ask your question. Dawn, can you hear us?
Yes.
You're welcome to ask your question now.
My question is that my daughter is 22 years old. She doesn't know how to vote. I register her to vote. My point is no one teaching the younger kids how to vote. And it's not only her. I work for Home Depot, and I asked the girl, did you go and vote? They say, no, I don't know how to vote. Young people, 20, 19, they don't know how to vote. They don't know what procedure to do to vote. And nobody's educating them on that. And that's
your question, yeah. What was the exact question?
How to educate the young people to learn how to vote. They are the upcoming future. I know older people vote because they know how to vote, but what about the younger ones who is in college and they don't even know how to vote? Nobody's educating them.
Thank you for your question, and I think it starts with you. You are actually engaging with your daughter and young people to talk about the voting process and the importance of that. I'd love to share just a couple of things under my leadership the county clerk's office is doing to engage young voters. One of them is our high school worker program. We hire hundreds of high school workers. All they have to do is be at least 16 years of age. We go into the local high schools that will allow us. Again, this is a partnership with most of the local high school districts here in Harris County, where we come in and the voter registrar's office does voter registration if they qualify. And then our office allows them to fill out applications to not only register, but to qualify them to vote. Qualify them to work the actual election polls. And this process is called the High School Poll Worker Program. And anybody knows high school students, they know electronics very well. And they are assigned to an election poll on election day to help navigate the iPads and actually work the poll, which is teaching a great civic duty. This process started several years ago in Harris County which went from, just a couple of hundred to election workers in high school, and now we have grown to thousands of election workers. As a matter of fact, it's so important now, this civic program, is that we have high school workers working every single election that's a part of the process. This year, we also received a grant here in Harris County that will be able to fund us to go on college campuses, and I'm so proud to say that some of our voting locations here in Harris County are on college campuses like the University of Houston, Texas Southern University, Houston Community College locations, as well as Lone Star Community College locations. So while we haven't addressed it all, and there is only so much work we can do, I think it behooves me to make sure that I lay out that we know that this should be a priority for all voters. And as a result, we are continuing to partner with entities like the library, like AARP, and so many other partnerships to encourage young voters to be a part of the process. Again, it starts with at home. My mother, I learned at a young age about the voting process by walking into the polls with my mom as early as 5 years old. But I think as a collective, we can continue to do that work, and I hope this has been helpful for you to know the priority in reaching out to young voters. My priority as county clerk to reach young voters.
Thank you
very much. Do we still have time for one last question, Chandra?
Yes, we do.
All right, awesome. So we have Ms. Pearl here. Quick question. Ms. Pearl?
Will I receive my application to fill out so that I can vote from home? I'm 83, so I would be age eligible.
Thank you for that. Yes, thank you for that. I think it's amazing to hear the stories of our voters, and what great respect. You have definitely been the leading of those, just like me. I'm obviously half of the age, but I thank you for mentioning that you've applied for a ballot by mail, and you will receive it and within and way before Election Day to be able to execute an application and be able to vote by mail. So thank you for that notification. Thank you for letting us know that you've applied. If you've applied, give us just a little time. We'll make sure that mail ballot gets to you.
Wonderful. So as promised, let's run through a couple more key dates for the upcoming election in Harris County for the Texas primary. Early voting begins Tuesday, February 20th. Last day to apply for a mail-in ballot is February 23rd. Early voting ends on Friday, March 1st, and the Texas primary election day is Tuesday, March 5th. So let's see. This discussion has been incredibly helpful. It looks like we're about to get to the end of our time here. Once again, AARP Texas would like to thank the Harris County Clerk Teneshia Hudspeth for participating on this important call. Do you have any final remarks before we close here?
Thank you all so very much for allowing me on the platform today and your continuous partnership. All elections are important, no matter what the title of the election, and your vote literally starts here. The very first election of 2024 is the primary season. So we start here, and then we have plenty more other elections throughout the election cycle. We ask you to visit harrisvotes.com, harrisvotes.com, for all important information in regards to elections in Harris County, and even state compliance in terms of voting for across the state. VoteTexas.gov if you're not sure what county you're in and you need to identify what county. And if you cannot or do not go online, you can call us at 713-755-6965. Again, 713-755-6965. Thank you for allowing us to serve you.
Thank you to all of you for joining us today and participating in this telephone town hall to talk about voting in the upcoming Texas primary on Tuesday, March 5th. Thank you, County Clerk. Thank you for your time again for joining us. We apologize if we were not able to get to your question. If you stay on the line, you will be able to leave us a voicemail message with your question, and we will do what we can to get your question answered for you. You can also find valuable information on the upcoming Tuesday, March 5th election at aarp.org/TX votes. Again, that's aarp.org/Texas votes. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization that has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years. We hope that today's call was helpful to everyone. We appreciate everyone's time and participation. Thank you and have a good day. This concludes our call.